Okay, just I will make the introduction during this time. It's not my slides, but well. So nice to meet you. If I don't know me, I'm Nicolas Cannasse. I'm original writer of Axe programming, so of Axe language. So yeah, when I was asked to come today, the topic was about talk about something that might please to web developers, that might tell something about web developers. I originally come from web, like I say about the history of Axe. I was doing a lot of web games back in the Flash days. And but these days I mostly do game development, like on PC, Steam, and consoles. So I'm a bit far from the web developments. So I was thinking, okay, what should I present today to you that might be related more to the things you're doing every day? And the thing is that there's similar problems we are tackling in web development that you might have to doing game development and web development. There are some common areas where things are shared. One problem we had in our games recently was, all games have this problem, but we getting more and more in these problems, was about ways to handle the UI of our games. One is technical stuff. Well, you need good algorithms, you need good architecture, but the UI is always the messy parts, the part that there's a lot of boilerplate things to be done. So we wanted to improve our tooling there to create new tools. And having been web developer in the past, I really like the concept of the DOM, of the having to wait to describe an UI using some kind of markup language, be able to modify the visual with CSS or something similar, and be able to get a real-time feedback when you modify something. For example, you don't have to be a coder. You can modify CSS. Artists can actually see the changes and make changes. So the coder doesn't have to do everything by himself. He can just provide the designer the things he needs, or get the design that is already made by a designer and integrate it. And so it can be a teamwork. It's more efficient to split things between developers and non-developers. Are we there? Yeah, almost. Yeah, and so I really like these both paradigms of markup language together with CSS. So, but one problem we have is that once you start having custom components, which are very game specific, for instance, in our games, we might have some components that takes data out of the GPU. So it can be textures, it can be 3D models that we want to display. It can be many different things that are very game specific. We can't express them as a simple, trying to create like we do HTML nodes. So it's actually for more, we wanted something to be able to describe more advanced custom components, and the way you link them together and you build them together, and still be able to use technologies such as CSS and markup language to have a way to declare them easily and to describe them and customize them. So I came with this. It was initially named UIKit, but I got told that it's already used by Apple, and I did a search and it was true. So I actually renamed it to DOMKit just yesterday, but not everywhere, so it's still a lot of UIKit showing, but just assume that the library is not yet released. I've been working on this on the past weeks, so it's still very fresh, so excuse me, there is some bugs in the demo I will be showing you. So basically what it does, the thing is that when I built it for our game engine at first, and I quickly realized that it was actually very not at all dependent from the engine. So I took it out of the engine, and it can be used to build your own component system for whatever engine. If you're using HTML, you can be used to create HTML components. If you are using your own custom DOM or your own custom component system, you can use this DOM kit to implement your own thing. So it provides XML markup language to describe your components. It provides a CSS engine to apply CSS property to these components that can have custom effects on these components. It provides a builder, which is not yet complete, which is a way to actually interact in real time and display the components as they change. And it provides a way to declare and expose custom components from your code to the markup language. So, and of course, because we are in Axe, we wanted everything to be strictly typed everywhere. So let me show you a bit how it works. So I will showcase using IPS because this is the only way we get some, so far, we get some nice display with UIKit. But you will understand quickly that it can be applied to many different kind of rendering, not only IPS. So here we have a class view, which is actually a custom view. In IPS, we don't have a concept of a div like you have in HTML, but we have something which is pretty similar, which is called a flow. So HDD flow is it's a block of an element block that can contain other elements and then actually have some kind of layout algorithm to display them either horizontally or vertically. You can think it, if you are familiar with HTML, such as a flexbox somehow. So here we extend a flow and we implement this specific UIKit object, which says that if you find some source, it means that you should parse it at compile time, and it contains some component structure that actually is the way your component is described. So here we declare that it's a flow, and we have actually we check that it extends flow and it's a flow, so it will be checked. So for instance, if I say here this is a bitmap, it will not compile. And you have several attributes. So we use attributes, but they can also be CSS properties. You can use it both ways. So you can declare, this is actually can be declared as a CSS property, or it can be declared as an attribute. And here you have to attribute with RGB hexadecimal code. We have a padding value, a minimal width. And here we have this specific content horizontal align attribute, which is using React syntax to say, I want this to be the value of the align variable. And the align variable, is part of the constructor here. So when we create a new component, it will create this flow and set its align value to the content align here. So the nice thing is that it's retyped because here it gets that view actually takes an align of the type of being flow line, because it's able to, since it's a flow, it knows that flow has this content horizontal line CSS property, and it knows that this type of this property is actually a flow line. So I will just show you just right now how it looks. Just compile and run. So it's compiling to Axe.js and showing in the browser. What is this? No, remote, don't care. So this shows just the flow, it's centered, and you have some hello world that is aligned to the right, okay? So this is run in WebGL actually, it's not DOM at all, it's purely WebGL styles. And if we can, of course, modify the background color here. Let's put some other color. And then recompile, and it runs. Okay, so nothing impressive so far. But the thing is, for instance, if I made a typo here, okay, I didn't check. I mean, if I put something like just a number here, like 23, or 33, and I compile, I will get an error saying invalid flow background value 33. Okay, it gives you the exact position at the place you've been mistaken. So the way it works is that here we declare a view, which is an object, so it's kind of is able to parse this. But we have a way to declare for all our components the way they are actually implemented in two ways. We have actually two things for each property. We have a type, which corresponds to a runtime type or a compile time type for the property. For instance, we declare that this content horizontal line property is of type flow line. And we have another thing, which is a parser, which is a way to interpret the CSS to turn it from the CSS value into the actual runtime value. So for instance, here I can as well put write and compile. Okay, I will fix my background color here first. Put some gray. So here I couldn't show errors. Yeah, and it doesn't know anymore what is right here because it doesn't know the type of align. So I will just pass null. It's not used. Okay. And here we have this, and it's aligned on the right. And of course, I can modify here, saying left. These are the values that are allowed for this content line. But since we are horizontal, if I use top, for instance, it's not a valid value, and I get invalid flow content align value top. Top should be auto, left, middle, right. Okay? And this is declared somewhere else. It's declared as part of the components declaration, which I will just show you right now. So basically, you have two ways to declare your components. One is to actually implement them this way. I just put the microphone to right a bit. Okay, that's it. That's a very super simple component that we just declare. We need to define also this name, his name, because we might want to use a different name than this. So here we declare a component. We say it's his name in the markup language will be comp. It has a class component, and it has two properties. One is an int, and one is a custom color, and the custom color can be either red, green, or blue. So it means that now we can actually use this here using comp color equal red, okay? And value equal 33. Or I could have, for instance, this be value params dot value, and this be, for instance, the horizontal line D be params dot align, and I have to write this with a single hand. It's not easy to type on these French keyboards. Yeah. So here I have, and here I have a new params which we require both an object with both align and value. Follow? Okay. So, and here, this is metadata, which is a property for the component system. By default, it will use, if it's an integer, it will require CSS to be integer. And if it's an enum like this, it will allow the different enum values. But you might have more complex things. You might have actual full custom properties that you want to have a special CSS for it, a very custom CSS. For instance, we have that for our background. In here we can specify an URL saying to a specific PNG or resources. This is very specific to IPS, but so we need a way to be able to define that. And this is exactly what we're doing here. That was what I was about to show you just before. Is declared here, h2d, DOM-kit, init components. And okay, this is the registration. Okay, and this is the base components. So here's a way to declare the base components in IPS. So we are directly jump to the flow component. So this is a bit particular here because we are not declaring the flow class already exists, and we want to declare a component corresponding to this flow class. So we just redeclare different properties, and then we somehow give some setters to say how these properties might affect the real object properties, the actual flow properties. So this is the declaration of the flow component, and the flow itself is another class that is part of the engine. But you don't have to have this distinction here. It's just the way I implemented for IPS. So if, for instance, you have a background which have a tile which is a part of a 3D texture and two borders that describe all the way the background tiles. And here you have this property called flow background here, and it means that when we are getting a CSS value, either at compile time or at runtime, we use the parse flow background, and because all these components they extends. I'm putting back to up. They extends object comp, which is a base object, and here have this parser declare, which says when your parse CSS value use this custom parser, the custom parser has this parse flow background and is able to say, okay, if the CSS value is transparent, then I return null. If it's a group with a tile and XY, I will parse the tile. And if not, I will just consider it's a tile. And when you get an invalid value, for instance, if you don't like the parse align or the parse vertical align or horizontal align we had before, if it's auto, middle, left, right, or here we get some custom error message, invalid property, X should be auto, left, middle, right, okay? So the way you can really easily declare your parsers, the way to interpret your CSS in a custom way, and decide the parser converts the CSS value into an actual property value, and then you have your eventual setters that will actually apply this value to your object. For instance, here the scale property affects both the scale X and Y for the same thing. So you have a way to, for instance, the margin property here will affect the padding of different values. So that's a way to also to create components for and give them some CSS kind of interface that is not at all implemented originally in the component itself. So you can do both ways. You can either implement it directly in the component if you want to declare components that are already aware of DOM-kit, or like this way, or you can, other way is to, you have an existing set of components and you want to be able to use these components with DOM-kit, then you declare like the class I showed just now, which are a way to give these components a CSS access. So yeah, so with this way we get perfectly typed, entirely standard typed HTML and CSS. The only thing that it doesn't, I haven't showcased you, but you can actually load CSS files at runtime and apply them to your components, and it will work as well. It will go through the validation of the CSS properties, and it will apply them to the component. Right now, it's quite, because it's CSS, we are still allowing a lot of errors to go, not creating runtime errors, but you can catch warnings and say, for instance, if it's, because we don't always know with CSS, because it's mostly based on classes. We don't know when from a class, we don't know how the property need to be parsed for a specific component. Because unlike CSS, you can have, for instance, the property value can have different meaning on depending on which component it is applied to. For some components, the value might be an int. For some other components, the value might be a string. So it depends really on the component name. But it's very efficient because we do some memorization of the result to make sure that we don't parse the CSS every time we need to apply it. So yeah, and last thing I wanted to show you, but it's not yet available, I'm still working on it, I couldn't finish on Monday, is that things I want to achieve is that a way to actually, when you have this component displaying on your application, is to have a way to track the change in your source file, such as if you modify your source file here, you get a real-time refresh of your components running in your engine or in your system directly. And the same goes, of course, for the CSS file. So you get both the possibility to have something which is strictly typed, and at the same time have a way to quickly iterate by changing things on the flow, and then hopefully have something that works well. Well, that's it. Thank you. If you have any question. Yeah.
How would you make this component, the comp, to actually display something? Is it something?
Oh yeah. Well, sure. Okay. So for components, you need a bit of extra work because I haven't shown anyway. So first, your components, they have to extend the base class of your component system, because either they are outside of the range of the components. So here, my base class is h2d object. So here I have this custom component here, which extends h2d object with these two values, and of course I need a constructor for them, which I will write down. Well, actually, I shouldn't. It's inherited, the constructor is inherited, so maybe I don't need it. And what I want here is I need another step, which is to register the component into the component system so the markup knows about it, because it might be in some other file, and we want to make sure that it's registered so that we can't use comp there. Okay? So I will register here. I have some init components here, which is already done, so I can add my own. Yeah, and it's failing, I guess, because we're trying to compile this file. Okay, we should put this one, I guess, in a different file after all, because we are using both the components in the file that declares it, so it's obviously creating some problems. Okay, let me check. Okay, there might be some little still issues with VS Code cache. I'm just restarting just a bit. Okay, now it compiles and it works. So if I have here and I have this com color red and I made a typo here and I compile, yeah, I get red should be red, green, blue. Okay, you see? So now if I want to, okay, this will make sure that it creates a component red that gets added to the component flow that is our view, but it still doesn't display anything. So here we might say, okay, what if let's say, I will not instead object, but instead bitmap, which is so here I'm translating my enum, which is has 3 different colors. I translate it directly to the hexadecimal color that is needed for this. And I create a 20 by 20 tile, which is actual full color square. And I sending, okay, and I'm setting this and return. See, that's something minor. And if I compile, okay. Okay, I have. Oh, I see. Already have a color value, so I will just change it here. And this is a cache problem. I'm working on it. Just this is because the compiler cache. This is a small issue I've been fighting with. I will fix it soon. And here I need to do not color but C color. Yeah, I changed. Okay, and running. Okay, I just, one last thing, which is a bitmaps takes a constructor. Yeah, it complains about a lot of things. So bitmap takes a tiles as a value, and right now I have this is something I'm working on to be able to pass values to constructors directly when creating the components, and to have them be mandatory. So you don't have to have a default constructor that takes no arguments when creating a new component. And I think we should be done. Yeah. Okay, so here are full components that actually display something. He has this C color that sets the tiles. By default, the tile is null, which doesn't display anything. And it's used in this part here. And I can compile and run. Oh, okay. Yeah, cannot report a TLI for null. So I have to change that here. Yeah. Yeah, and it's good. Okay, red. Okay, and okay, one last small thing, which is quite nice. I find a new feature. You can give it a name. This component saying name equal CCP, and here you can actually say, okay, view dot CCP, which is a COM component, dot ccolor. Oh, it's not public. Okay. Public. No, I don't think so. Do I?
Yeah, sure. How else would it?
That ccolor equal, and I put a caps lock, equal green. Yep. And I run, and it compiles and should work. What's wrong? Again a problem with compiler cache. That's something I'm working on. So. And it's green, okay? So, and it's all type safe. If I put, for instance, just like green like this, green, and I compile, the compiler will tell me green is not part of current compiler, and it says suggestion green. So you get a full type safe component system. And yeah, it's so the only work you need to do when you want to implement this component system is to implement your components or expose them to component systems and define the way you want the CSS to be to apply to your object properties. And this can work with any kind of structural documents, as long as you have one way, some documents that are expressed in a tree that have children and that have properties. You can map them to this component system and use the CSS values to declare them, modify them, apply CSS rule to them. It's optional if you want to, and have them named and use the whole system. Yeah, other questions? I don't know Coconut in all details. I get it. Maybe there's some common overlap. Hmm? Right now, you cannot track the data changes, but I'm sure we can add this quite easily by having additional ways to deal with that. I mean, that's something that could be easily added, I guess, to make sure that we don't have yet also like a virtualization of the object model. So right now, all the objects are actually really created, which I think like URI Coconut is more about a virtual DOM that creates a virtual, well, we could have a virtual representation of this and then delay the creation of the, that's more features that can be added on top of it. Right now I'm focusing on having things like type safe and a way to define how things works. After you can have as many features. Right now it's still early, so I don't have it. It's not yet supposed to be a React replacement at this point, but it might as well be for X users at least in later phase. Other questions?
I was wondering why the box was on the left of the hello.
Why is the box on the left of the hello? Because I think it's added after, and since we are lying on the right, all elements are aligned on the right. So first the hello and then the box. That's
One more question from Twitch.
yeah.
You mentioned parsing CSS.
Yeah.
I don't see any class property in your example.
Yeah. Right now we don't have this. I can show you with another example from the actual sources of the library. And of course, I don't have the open with VS Code. I don't know why on this computer, so I have to open it again from here. Open, does it show here? No. Open folder. So this is what is on GitHub right now. So the library and a small sample. And the sample have just a test file similar. So it doesn't do any display. It's just a sample that shows the logic. So here you have a class. So here we have really a class, CSS class foo. And here you have a custom component named sub with a custom color showing, okay, we can have these kind of things. So it's just tracing and saying that, okay, the color is blue and the padding left in. And then, it parse is using this. It's taking a CSS style, is a parsing CSS declaration, which say .foo, so the class foo custom, so any custom component inside the foo class has a padding left of 50. Then we apply this to the object that we created this way. It have because it implements the UIKit object. It has this set style method that is added, and you can apply any style sheet to it, and then the sub padding left gets changed from 0 to 50 thanks to the CSS. So it can parse a lot of. This is just a small sample, but it supports all the CSS notation. I guess maybe not all the CSS tree selectors, but that's something that can be added also at the later stage. So yeah, and it's just entirely custom CSS implementation, so you don't need to run in a browser to have it. Like the CSS is a parser that does parse the CSS thing, and this is a CSS style that actually applies the style to the different elements. It's quite not so big thing right now, because we don't again support all the selectors and everything, but it's something that can be changed later. And in this test we have we have an object here, and we have two components. We have custom and mydiv, which are declared here. We have base component, which has a name, and we have a div component with just some padding declaration, and we have a custom component, which is div component, and just have a custom parser for the CSS. So it's just a small example of how you declare components and how you expose them to DOM-kit. Okay. Well, thank you then. More question? Oh, no. Thank you. I think we have Q&A with Simon, I guess, maybe, or maybe some Q&A. No. Wake up. Okay, so we could just take a few questions and we. Yeah, can we just take a few questions and wrap up? Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, there was some potential questions about, I don't know, for Simon, about the compiler or explanation or like other topics. But I think we are running out of time, so we can do that out with a few beers. That will be as well. Maybe even better. Yeah? Okay, thank you.